Welcome back everyone to Teresa's Kitchen. Tonight I will be cooking one of my daughter's favorite recipe. It will be black beans and rice with pork chops. So tonight I've already have everything pretty much laid out. I have my pork chops that I will be washing. I am going to be using canned beans tonight. Yes, I have to cheat. And then a little oil, so I'm gonna kind of like pan fry them on top of the stove, like a little saute them with some onion and bell peppers. And this is my seasoning that I'm gonna be using: garlic, salt, a little Old Bay, and of course all-purpose seasoner. So you can pretty much season your pork chop however way you want to season your pork chop, but this is my seasoning for tonight. I also have a pot of rice that I have basically soaking. This is just regular rice. It's not po boy rice or jasmine rice. Normally when you're working with different types of rice, it calls for a soaking so you can get all that extra starch off. You can pretty much soak it ahead of time for like 20 minutes and you can get all of that whiteness, which is called the starch, off of your rice. And rinse it off for like 3 times. And remember I said the rule of thumb, anytime that you're making rice, that also goes for the jasmine and the poor boy rice. Wherever the rice stops, you need to at least have that much water over your rice. So you can also include a dash of salt to make sure your salt, you can include a dash of salt to make sure that your rice has some sort of flavor. Some people like to put butter in it. I personally, I use a little oil so it won't be all gummy. So, are we ready to get it going? Let's get started. So I'm gonna get started with going ahead and opening up the package of pork chops. And again, remember, I've always said any type of meat that you get, wash it. So whatever your ways of washing your meat, you wash it. And that's what I'm doing. I'm washing my meat. And I'm just going to place it in the bowl. So after I'm done washing my meat, I'm just going to season it. Make sure you have the excess water off, so when you're seasoning your meat, that there won't be any water left on your meat. The only thing you mainly want is your seasoning so it can stick to your meat. So when you're cooking, it can still get that flavor. I personally, when I get meat, I like to season my meat ahead of time. And what I mean by ahead of time, if I buy it today, I'm going to season it and I'll probably eat it 2 or 3 days from now. That way I know that that robust of flavor is going through the meat. But because I didn't do that, I'm just going to go ahead and season it now. Therefore, here I have my pork chops, and they're boneless, by the way. Okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and season them up with the seasoning that I showed you earlier. And I will be sauteing them with my variations of bell peppers. I have red and yellow today. I chopped up at least a half a bell pepper for both. A half because it was a large bell pepper. They weren't small bell peppers today, so I took a half of a red and a half of a yellow one. And then I have at least 2 medium-sized red onions. And I'm gonna basically saute this together with the pork chops. It's gonna give it an amazing taste. So let me go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and season the meat and I'll be right back. So now that I'm done seasoning my meat, I'm just gonna go ahead. Remember that pot of rice I told you I had soaking for at least 20 minutes ahead of time? I hope you can see the water. Uh-oh. It's kind of milky. Well, that's the starch that's on top of the rice, and you don't want that. So do you see the starch that's on top of the rice? This is what we do not want. We want to get rid of that milky looking substance. So I'm going to rinse it at least 3 times until the water becomes clear. And once the water is clear, I know that I can go ahead and put my last batch of water in and go ahead and place it on top of the stove so it can go ahead and cook. What I am doing is just let the water run over it. You can take your hand and you can like pretty much get all of the starch out of the rice. And once it becomes nice and clear, then you know you can basically go ahead and fill your pot up with water and then go ahead and cook it. We're just basically trying to get all the starch off, as much starch as possible. See all that starch? So, it's no longer starchy. See how the water's coming in nice and clear? I'm just gonna pour it off one more time just for safe measures. No more starch, or at least the majority of the starch is gone. So I'm gonna fill my pot up. You see where I filled up the water? So now I probably need like a ½ inch of water to go over the rice. And that should be enough to cover the rice. And then all I need to do is place it on the stove with a dash of salt. Once I put that dash of salt, put a little bit of oil, and voila, our rice will begin to cook. You can put like a tablespoon or 2 of cooking oil in it. That way when the rice cook up, it's gonna be nice. It won't be gummy because you washed all the starch off the rice. As you can see, the stove is on medium high. So you're gonna put a lid on it, cover it, try not to stir it, and in about 20 to 30 minutes, you'll have some piping hot rice. Now that I have the rice going, I'm gonna go ahead and start to saute my vegetables. I'm just gonna saute them lightly. And once I'm done sauteing them, I'm going to put them off to the side, and then we'll be cooking the pork chops. So in the pan, I didn't put too much oil in it because I want to go ahead and just saute my vegetables lightly, and then I'm going to use the remainder of the oil to go ahead and saute my pork chops as well inside the same pan. So again, let me go ahead and get started with the vegetables first, and I'm just going to saute them for about probably 5 minutes. So while I'm waiting for the vegetables to cook down some, I'm just going to go ahead and open up my cans of black beans. I'm going to cook about 2 cans of black beans. And I like to basically season my beans. Just because the can may say that it's already seasoned, I like to be able to taste the flavor in my beans. And you can pretty much dress up your beans, you know, like you can saute you some bacon, you can put onions and bell peppers in it, and it's just going to give a twist to what your black beans are like. But because this was a last second dinner, because I originally wanted a salad, but my daughter was like, no, I want some black beans and rice and pork chops. So that's what I'm making today. And of course, I have my 2 cans of beans inside. And I'm just gonna add a little bit of the complete seasoning. That's all you pretty much need to give it a little flavor. Stir it around, put it on top of the stove, and let it warm up. And you will have another nice meal. So the beans are already done, so you just pretty much need to just warm them up, put a top over them. Now we're just going to go ahead and stir those vegetables that I told you I only wanted a few minutes to saute, because what I'm going to do at the end is just throw them back in the pan once the pork chops are done. So now all I'm doing is just combining them. See our veggies looking really good. So once I take them out the pan, I'm just going to put maybe another tablespoon or 2 of oil inside the pan. And I'm just going to let the pork chops cook. I'm not going to flour them. I'm just going to pan fry them just like that on top of the stove until they brown. And then I'm just going to put back in the vegetables. Vegetables have cooked long enough. Now it's time to just take them out. This is probably what you would want it to be like. If you want yours to cook a little bit longer, that's fine. But I like mine to cook like this for the time being. So I'm going to pour at least a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of oil in the pan. That's going to be for the pork chops. And I'm just going to simply put the pork chops in the pan because the pan is already hot. And these are boneless pork chops. They're quite thin. So we're just gonna let the pork chops brown on each side. I have the stove on medium high so they can go ahead and brown. And once they begin to brown, I'll flip them over. I'll show you how they look when they are browned on this one side. You season your food the way you like to season it. So we'll just let it cook a few more minutes. Hopefully they'll be done soon. We have our pot of beans on, our pot of rice on. So, a few minutes. So do you hear those pork chops sizzling in the background? Not only are they sizzling, but they're smelling mighty good. So I'm just gonna turn them over because we don't want no burnt pork chops. And remember, I told you that they need to be cooked all the way through. I wish there was such thing as a smell-o-vision for real, where you could smell all this wonderful smells from this pork chop being cooked. I want to show you guys the perfect pot of rice. This is not po-bar rice, nor is it jasmine rice. This is just plain white rice. And remember how I told you to soak your rice and make sure that all of that milky looking substance is off, which is basically called the starch. You do it for like 3 times until the water runs clear. And then you put at least a half an inch of water above the rice that's in the pot. And let's take a look at this rice. You see it? It's not sticking together. This is like the perfect pot of rice. This is what I call a pot of dry rice. This is what I like. And on that dry rice, of course, we're gonna have our black beans on the side. About the pot of beans you got over there, you don't want them to start sticking to the bottom of the pot and scorching, meaning it's gonna be burnt. So being that they have already came cooked in the can, just warming them up. I like to be extra and just warm them up a little bit longer than normally. But make sure you have whatever seasoning you want inside of your beans. Because again, you just don't want a plain old pot of beans going on top of a bed of rice. Yeah, no, who wants that? Look at those pork chops. They are all on the same page now. They're looking really good. So they've been cooking for at least about a good 7 to 10 minutes. They're thin, so they really don't have to cook that long because you don't want them to be thin and dry. For your pork chops, remember those vegetables that you sauteed earlier? Go ahead and pour them over into your pan. And just toss everything together. Let them cook for a few minutes and they'll be done. Actually, you could probably turn it down on low, put a lid on it, and just let it cook for about 2 minutes, and it should be done. Add maybe like a 1/4 cup of water at the bottom to make sure that when you covered your pork chops, that they are nice and tender. So I'm going to cover them up, let them cook for about 2 minutes, and they should be done. Here are the pork chops. Finally done. You hear the sizzle? Along with the pot of white rice. Amazing dry white rice. It's not parboiled or jasmine rice. Then of course, we got our beans. This is the final results of our pork chop dinner for tonight. I have the steamed pork chops with sauteed bell peppers and onion. I have the black beans that are seasoned and white rice. So, if you like what you see, subscribe and comment. And thank you once again for watching Teresa's Kitchen. And have a good night.